Well, welcome to our tribute to Gustaf Sobin today. I'm Gail Brown, Executive Director of the Poetry Center. It's great to see you all here. Gustaf Sobin was a U.S.-born writer who spent most of his adult life in France. And today we have poets, translators, friends, editors, family who have come from across the Americas to celebrate his work, reflect on his literary achievements. Not in order of the way they're sitting up here. I have a different sort of catalog for you. Teddy Lopez Mills, translator of Sobin's work, comes to us from Mexico City. Edward Foster, Sobin's editor and publisher, is here from New Jersey/Massachusetts. Andrew Zawacki, Sobin's literary co-executor, traveled from the University of Georgia. Then we have our sort of rather large San Francisco contingent, Bay Area contingent. Sobin's other literary executor, Andrew Jerome, editor and publisher Jeffrey Miller, Sobin's friend and correspondent Michael Palmer, and Sobin's brother Harris, who isn't actually going to be on this panel, but he'll be with us later. He's going to arrive shortly. He's coming in from Sonoma, California. All of our guests are participating in today's panel discussion moderated by Charles Alexander, and they're going to return this evening to read selections of Sobin's work, selections that have particular meaning to them. And so we can get to the subject at hand. We're not going to do a lot of biographical work right now. You should all have a sheet, and if you don't have one, raise your hand if you don't have a bio sheet. Okay. Well, Bonnie Jean's going to come through the audience and give that to you so you can read for yourself about the achievements of our panelists today. Gustaf Sobin read for the Poetry Center in 1996. And you can hear a recording of that reading in our audio-video room in the library. Today's events came about largely through conversations between Gustaf's brother Harris and the Poetry Center. Harris is an emeritus professor in the School of Architecture here, and he served for many years on the Poetry Center's development committee and offered invaluable advice and support to us during the design and construction of this building, the Helena Schaefer building. We are fortunate at this time that we're able to time this event with the publication of Talisman House's collected poems of Gustaf Sobin. That book over here is available for sale, courtesy of U of A bookstore, as well as some of the works by our participants today. We're going to have a reception about 4:30, and that's an opportunity to buy the books and to talk with our participants and maybe have them sign copies for you. This event is made possible through the generosity of the Friends of the Poetry Center. These are people who enable us to present this kind of free programming to you. Now, please welcome our moderator for today, our good friend of the Poetry Center, poet, publisher, and founder of Chaps Press, Charles Alexander.
Can everyone hear me without the microphone? Yes? Okay. We'll try to work that way. However, for any panelists that feel like they need it, the microphone's available. I want to start, just read a passage from the Places. This prelude is very short. That is a poem that in the midst of it says, being locked into all that clattering canebrake, squinted, didn't you, in search of interstice, lapsus in the midst of textus, for winnowing your words through. And it's from that passage that I chose the title, and Gail kind of is the one who said, oh, let's use that for a title, Words Through. And specifically kind of, I think, indicating not through words, as though through words you go somewhere else, but words through, as though words themselves are the passageway and we take them with us. And of course they do connect to just about everything. This distinguished group here, I feel like I have almost nothing to do, which is absolutely wonderful. We're going to start out by hearing a little bit about some of the themes in Sobin's work, but among what you will hear today will be about the work, about the person, about the relationship of person to place, You will hear a combination of critical comments and reminiscences and memoirs, and something that hopefully from which will emerge not quite a portrait, but a common and even communal sense of Gustaf Sobin and his work. Each person will speak for roughly 8 or 9 minutes, maybe 10 minutes in some cases, and at the end of that, they may have some questions for each other from what emerges here, and we also definitely want to open it up to the audience for questions. So to get things rolling, I want to ask Andrew Zawicki first to speak.
Thank you. I'm charged with the impossible task of trying to summarize some approaches to Sobin in about 8 or 9 minutes, so I'll just stop when my time is up, and everything I say is meant as a kind of hyperlink to lots of other discussions that we may or may not have today. The title of this panel really is appropriate, Words Through. And I think it's because it goes to a fundamental kind of indecisiveness or a fundamental dynamic that's at work in Gustaf Sobin's work. The first way of hearing, because I think there are 2 ways to hear it. The first way, in titles like Celebration of the Sound Through and even in Voyaging Portraits, is to hear it in a kind of positive fashion, and that is putting an emphasis on the word through as a preposition, that words move through, that words move through the poet, that the poet moves through incarnations of himself or herself toward a kind of evanishment or a disappearing. It was very important to Gustaf Sobin that his poetry books be seen not as poetry volumes, but as volutes, in a way, in which language passed through. And the poet as a kind of person or an identity existed only insofar as he was there to channel or sluice or serve as a conduit for writing. He was a late bloomer. He says that he didn't write his first poem until he was 37. And what caused him to write that poem was the word crystal. He alighted on this kind of talismanic object that both is a thing and then is also sort of somehow not there because of its transparency. And what he found so interesting and important about it was the fact that whatever it was in itself, it diffracted light and changed it beautifully. So it served as an initial kind of marker or conduit for what poetry might do. It might be that kind of movement or passage. That the poem would move through itself and shuck itself, that the poet would be shucked in the process, and that language would move towards its own disappearance. That's one way to hear it. That's if we think of through as a preposition. But if through is an adjective, then there's a sense of hearing words through as like when you say, I'm through with you, or I've had it, a sense of exhaustion or finishing. And indeed, there's a predominant mode in Gustaf Sobin's poetry that has to do with being at the end of history, tracking historical narratives as they come to their, in his sense, illogical conclusions, watching the relationships between people become more and more mediated over time, indexing how civilizations that used to be self-sufficient or used to exist in the immediacy of their own voices have been dispersed or displaced, broken up, balkanized over time. So there was a real sense in Sobin's work that we were at the end of something. And so then the question becomes, how cynical is that? How pessimistic is it? Or is that the necessary precondition for starting something over again? Gustaf Sobin wrote 8 individual volumes. In the order of their appearance, they were Wind Chrysalids Rattle, which doesn't have the word crystal in it, but you can sort of hear crystal in chrysalid.